I'd like to call up for passport fees the Honorable Ruth Wilson, the Clerk of Courts, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I come to you this morning with a proposal for passport fee allocation. In response to the recent Metro News coverage of passport fee allocation, Rockdale Clerk of Courts Ruth A. Wilson today introduces a proposal to the Board of Commissioners to formalize and document the manner in which the Rockdale County Clerk of Superior Court and the BOC will allocate the fees generated by the processing of passport applications. First, we wish to assure the people of Rockdale County that the clerk's office operates in an accountable and financially transparent manner in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. In the most recent audit by Malden and Jenkins CPAs, there were no findings for our office, meaning that there were no areas of our financial operations needing correction or improvement. As a normal recurring function, the grand jury recently reviewed our operations and was quite laudatory. In addition to the normal duties of the clerk as defined by Georgia law, our office also provides passport services under the auspices and regulations of the U.S. State Department. Georgia law and federal regulations permit the clerk to retain the extra federal income for the extra federal services provided. These are not taxpayer dollars. Passport processing is an optional service we provide as a public convenience. We are the only passport acceptance agency in the county, and the service is needed by the public. This work requires exacting attention to detail, accurate handling of funds, timely processing of documents, protection of individual identities, knowledge of complex and changing regulations, and a highly developed customer service focus. The State Department requires training with a pass-fail test and an annual audit of compliance. The clerk's office is very well suited for this type of work, and we perform it well. Starting in 2009, in order to provide transparency, we have provided to Rockdale County government monthly bank statements of passport fees. In 2011, it amounted to about $44,000. We have chosen to use the funds to create a more positive workplace environment, improve office space, support the needs of the office, provide staff blazers, defray travel expenses, support local businesses and charities, and fund staff recognition and reward programs. Because the office is understaffed and employees are underpaid, the availability of these funds helps retain the specialized talent we have. Our proposal is to split the fees as follows: 50% to be allocated to the clerk as permitted by law, 25% to be allocated to the county general fund, 25% to be allocated for use by the clerk's office for needed hardware, software, equipment, supplies, recognition and reward programs, furniture, etc., as deemed appropriate by the clerk and approved by the Board of Commissioners. Respectfully submitted, yours truly. I have spoken with the Finance Department. They say this can be implemented very easily. I ask the Commissioners carefully consider this proposal as it is clearly in the public interest. Thank you for your time and attention this morning.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, I have a question for you. So you're asking for this to be put into a resolution?
Whatever the process would need to be.
Is that what would have to happen?
Are you asking me? You can do it by resolution, but I would think the board might want to think about what you might want to do with these funds. And I haven't heard from the finance director on this issue yet, on how much can be allocated, and I'd like to consult with her as well.
Okay. All right.
All right.
I had a couple more questions. I know when we talked yesterday, we talked about a couple of options for allocations. And a couple of things that came up. You attached an article from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution titled Clerk's Passport Profit Examined. So yesterday, the information I got was $54,000 for 2011.
And that was a draft.
Okay. So it was $44,000 for 2011. But this is money that you take personally for the processing of passport fees.
I pay taxes on the full amount. I don't
So you
keep
take it
all.
personally. Okay. And I guess my concern is, I know that we've had a rough couple of years with our budget and everything. And so for me, our taxpayer dollars are the ones that actually fund the employees that are doing the work of processing the passports. And those taxpayer dollars pay for the office space and the copiers and all the equipment used to process those passport fees. And in the article, it clearly states that DeKalb and Fulton, the passport fee money, it goes right to the general budget, which is where I believe it should go. Furthermore, in the article, it states that Ms. Gooch, who's one of the clerks, she says, in my opinion, when a constitutional officer gets elected with a salary set by state law, I think that should be the only compensation they receive unless state law allows them to get additional pay for additional duties.
State
Now-
law does permit additional pay for these additional federal
Yes.
duties.
It does.
The compensation
yes.
for the clerk does not include passport processing.
Right, and it is legal, so it's a loophole in the law, and it looks like they are going to try and address this. My concern, and I apologize, my concern is that when the finance director pulled the level of salaries for our employees in the county, that supplement would make you very close to Judge Nancy Bills, who is our third ranking, and that's not with the other judges who are paid by the state. That would be Judge Irwin and Judge Nation. So that makes you about the highest paid county employee outside of them, and I've got numbers if you'd like to see them. But I do have a lot of concern about our taxpayers paying for the actual labor and office and all of the equipment that is used to process those, and then you reap personally the reward of those funds.
I share your concern. That's why I'm proposing that the county receive a 25% allocation.
And why would it not be 100%? If we pay for those expenses?
Because we're doing extra work
But
on
we-
behalf of the public,
Right.
and for extra work, we expect to be paid extra money. That's
But
why.
you were the one that personally gets it. Now, when the finance director ran
I
the
pay
numbers,
the taxes on 100% of it, yes.
Well, I know you do, but I'm concerned because in your proposal, the last sentence says, this office is understaffed and employees are underpaid. The availability of these funds help retain the specialized talent we have. You have 30 employees, and this excludes the salary for your part-time employee and yourself. But those 30 employees, the average between all 30, they make $31,000. So if they make $31,000, yet you get to keep this $44,000 in 1 year alone, it's just very concerning that reward is not given back in salaries or put into the budget or something of that nature, and maybe reallocated for those type of incentives in your office.
If this were taxpayer money, you would be right.
But it is taxpayer money because we
It's
pay
federal
for it.
dollars.
Well, then why don't you use that money to pay the employees that are processing?
There's no way for me to
Excuse me.
predict how much this will be.
Excuse me.
And I didn't come here to
Excuse me,
debate this
Clerk.
this
Madam
morning.
Clerk.
I
Madam
came to
Clerk.
make a proposal,
Madam
and I'd
Clerk.
like you to consider it.
I appreciate your line of questioning, but we're going to move forward with this.
Thank you.
But I do have
Thank
one
you.
more question.
All right.
I do know that the state legislature is working on some type of state law, and I'm sure you and your team are probably keeping up with that process. Are you?
No bill was
No
proposed.
bill was proposed. This was that.
No
Okay.
bill was proposed.
Okay. Well, thank you, and
Mr.
like
Chairman,
further discussion.
if you don't mind, I do have one question for Madam Clerk. I'm just a little interested to know what has been done previously and prior to your administration in terms of these same fees of funding that has been received from the federal government, since there is no, the post office, as I understand, in many cities and counties, are the particular office that handles issuing of passports. And here in Rockdale County, I understand that there's no local post office that handles that, and your office is the office that handles that procedure in terms of passport.
That's correct.
What has happened prior to you coming into office in terms of the managing of these fees and funding? Can you give us some brief?
That question is very difficult to answer. The process has been in place since 1992. There was not a separate passport account established so that you could easily track how much money was coming in, how it was being spent, that kind of thing. One of the reasons I came forward with this proposal is to establish transparency so that in the future it'll be very easy for the public to know how much money is involved and how it's being handled by the county. That is the whole purpose here, is to close the gap in transparency there. It's my understanding that the past practice was for the fees to be retained as personal income, but it's difficult for me to document that because, as I say, there was not a procedure in place. I'm hoping that after this resolution or whatever action the board decides to take, after this, there will be no lack of clarity, no lack of understanding, and it should be much easier for the public to understand what's going on.
And I do want to clarify that previously it wasn't in our general budget. So there is no line item in the budget documents that we ever see. This has been separately kept outside in the clerk's court in your bookkeeping, not in our financial office bookkeeping.
The point is that the public had no clear way to know how much money was involved, and I think that needs to be corrected.
Commissioner Venice, has this ever come up before?
It's never come up. In fact, when I found out about this, through the rumor mill, I was shocked and I was like, "There's no way." And so when I checked it out, I found out, how could I have missed this? I went back through budget documents and spoke to Ms. Miller, and she said it doesn't come through our general budget. And when we talked about for the budget in the clerk of court's office, and we moved the Board of Equalization was moved to that office, and we had to allocate another $83,000 that we had a tough time coming up with. Clerk Wilson said, "I have no more money. I don't have flexibility," so we had to give her all that funding. And at that time, we never knew about this passport.
Well, I find it interesting that this has never come up before, but I'm glad that it is before us. It's being very transparent in terms of the itemized breakdown in terms of what the clerk wants to do. Now, the board has a decision to make as to whether we're going to turn this into a resolution or do something with it to move forward, that it stays transparent in front of all of the citizens in the county. It has never come up before, but for some unusual or unknown reason, it's before us today, and maybe that's a good thing. Now that it's before us, we as a Board of Commissioners have a decision to make as to how we're going to proceed forward to keep this very plain and clear and transparent for all of the citizens in Rockdale County moving forward, even beyond Clerk Wilson's tenure. If we adopt some type of resolution, it will go into play, and that means that from this clerk and any other clerk that operates in that office, we will have a clear, transparent mode of operation as to where the fees are going, where the money is going, and every citizen in Rockdale County will be clearly made aware of what's happening with that money.
And let's be careful not to mix budgeted taxpayer dollars with this extra federal money. You cannot budget this money. You don't know when it's coming in or if it's coming in. It could disappear tomorrow. So you cannot make this a budget line item. You certainly can't operate a critical function like the Board of Equalization based on passport money. So let's be clear about that. The federal money must be kept separately accounted for.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you for your time.
So, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
So if I'm hearing this, we'd like to invite you back to a work session.
I'd be happy to do that.
Come back, but it seems as though this has never been an issue before or an opportunity before, right? So is there any documentation previously that depicts the dollars that was allocated to previous clerks?
I can probably come up with that, yes. I will do my best to come up with it.
Okay.
That'd be good.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next, ladies and gentlemen.